Okay, welcome back. This is the third video in my series learning the notes on DG Melodeon. In the previous episode we learnt the first four notes of the G major scale. So we learnt how to find the G on your own particular instrument, and then from there we went up the scale and learnt those four. So G, A, B and C. So what we want to do now is continue with that and finish off the G major scale, at least the first basic version of it, and learn the next four notes. So here we go. Right, so what's the next note? I'm sure you can probably guess what this is going to be. It's going to be a note called D natural. And to find it, well, we'll go back to our piano keyboard and start off from what we already knew, which was from G, A and B and C. And then go to the next note, which is in the G major scale. And that one is going to be the next white one again. And that's our D. And you can spot a D easily because when you've got two black notes together on their own, D is the note which is between them. So that's a good reference point for that. Before we put this down, you'll notice once again that between the C and the D there's a black note, and we've not talked about that. This is going to be a C sharp or a D flat if you want to know the name of it. And again, that's not a note which appears in our G major scale. However, this is an interesting one because it will occur later on quite prominently on our instruments, but not quite yet. So for now, ignore it. We're going to go from C to D. So where is it on our Melodeon? Probably not going to be a surprise here, but again we'll start with what we know. We're going to need to find the G note on your own instrument. On here it's on the third button. Yours might be different. And then we work out like we did before, A, B, C, and so the next one we're going to do is on the fifth button on this row, on this particular instrument, and we're going to push it in, and that's going to be our D note. So G, A, B, C, and then push it on the fifth one like that. There we go. We've got a new note. One interesting thing with this one is that if you were to play that note, the D, and the G note at the same time, you get a sound that's like this, which is quite agreeable, I think. And that is difference between those two notes when they're played together, known as an interval, and that one is called a fifth, or technically a perfect fifth, but a fifth will do for now. And that's a rather good thing to be able to do. And another thing you could do as well, if you were feeling adventurous, is play those two together, but also the one in between, the B note. And if you remember, the G and the B sound good together. So does it sound good with the D as well? It certainly does. Three notes together, that's what we call a chord. And in particular, this one is the chord of G major. So it's the chord that relates to the scale that we're working in. Sounds good, doesn't it? So there's your first right hand chord, G major. G, B, D. There. Educational, huh? You've even got the right hat on. Next. Okay, we're on a roll now. Let's not make this any longer than it needs to be. We're going for another note, and another note is the next one in our sequence of G major notes. And again, begin what we did back on the keyboard, G, A, B, C, D. The next note in our G major scale that we can get on the keyboard is another white note, and it's going to be next door to our D, and this one is going to be called, yep, you guessed it, E, or E natural if you're being proper. That one sounds like this. So I'll play our D again. Nothing surprising there. And I'll point out as well that there is another one of these unused black notes in between the D and the E. That one. And that one, we could call that D sharp or E flat. Either way, it doesn't matter because that note isn't on the main part of our G row on our Melodeon. So ignore that one for now, but note that the difference between the D and the E, we've got a semitone up and then another semitone, so that's another tone there. But never mind that, we'll go back to our instrument and find it on the Melodeon because that's what you really want. So find your G wherever it is on your own instrument, then work up the scale again. So G, A, B, C, D. Now the D was played on the 5th button pushing in, and the E is played on that same 5th button but pulling out. So you're probably not surprised about that because we had a nice obvious sequence here. So that one push, this one pull, push, pull, push, pull, and that's taken us to that E. And well, yep, that's your 6th note sorted out. Well done. Right, okay, time for the 3rd new note of this video. Go back to the keyboard and make it clear what's going on here before we then again transfer it to here. So what are we doing? We've done G, A, B, C, D, E, and that's the last one we did. So what's the next note? And now you might be rushing ahead here and thinking, it's going to be the next white one and it's going to be called F. Well, it's true that the next note on the keyboard is white. There's no black one in between, certainly. It's another semitone here. And it is true that this note is called F. However, it's also true, and may be confusing to you, but you just have to live with this, that F isn't the next note in the G major scale. We don't actually use F natural, F, at all in that G major scale. So this is actually another one of those strange ones that we miss out, like that one and that one. It's just not one that we're going to be using, and it's not on your G row on your Melodeon either, or at least not on the main part of it. So yeah, everything's gone a bit strange now. It was all a nice pattern up to there, and suddenly we go here and we're not using it. What we're going to be using instead of that one is F sharp, a black one. So yeah, we're actually going to use one of the black ones now, so which might seem exciting, but it's just going to sound like anything else really. So we'll play it. If I play an E, that's the F sharp. So where's that on our Melodeon? Well, we don't have any black buttons, so it's going to be another one of the white ones. And actually it's probably simpler than you think really, because well, we'll find your G on your wherever it is on your instrument, go up A, B, C, D, E, we've done all that. The F sharp, not the F sharp is just the next button along, but this time we're going to pull this, which might seem strange because every other time when we've moved to a different button we've pushed it first, but on this one we pull it first. If you've been playing any time you've probably figured this out anyway, but yeah, the pattern kind of breaks when we get there. So from the bottom again, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, and then another pull, and that pull is the F sharp button. Now previously I've talked about like G natural or B natural and said that you don't have to say natural, you can just say B or G and people will know what you're talking about, and that's good. What you can't do is say, well, it's F sharp but I'm just going to say F, because actually that doesn't work. If you just say F, people will assume that you're talking about the F natural note and not F sharp. So you can't try and bail out of that. You've got to remember to say F sharp for that note all of the time, because it's not going to make sense to anyone if you don't. That is definitely F sharp. If you wanted to, you could call it G flat, but we won't for now. We'll call it F sharp and that's it. Do not call it F, because that would be wrong. So there we go. That's third new note in this video. We've got one more to go, so can you work out what that is? See you after the jump. Okay, I said that we were going to be doing the last 4 notes in the G major scale. We've done, where did we start from? We must have started from D, then we went to E, then we went to F sharp, and finally, well, we'll get our piano keyboard, see what that looks like on there. So we, from our G, went G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then the final one, F sharp. What's going to be next? It's going to be G natural. And if that seems familiar, well, we already played a G natural here. That was the note we started on, and that was the note, if you remember, that is between the first and second black notes in a group of 3. So if you look back up here, we've got another group of 3, and we've just played this one, which is the F sharp, and then the G again is in between those first 2. So that's another G note. So why is it another G note? Why isn't it got a different name? Well, if we play the G note we started on, and then we play this new one, well, they definitely sound different, but in other ways they sound the same. It's one of the odd things that happens in music. It's a concept called octaves, that you get the same note that's higher up but still sounds the same. What's happening is that the waveform that makes the note sound gets doubled, and when it gets doubled it sounds the same but it's higher. If I play them both together, perhaps you'll see what I mean even more clearly. So here's the lower one and here's the upper one, and then I play them together. It's hard to distinguish them like that because they sound like the same thing. Again, one. They're both G notes, even though one's higher than the other one. So that's where we've got to. We've started on the G note at the bottom. We've gone up, and we've gone up by a tone, and then a semitone, and then another tone, and then another tone, and another tone, and then another semitone. And that pattern of tones and semitones is the pattern that makes this particular scale a major one. The major is the name that refers to that particular pattern going up. If you like, we can go down using the same pattern. And it gives a distinctive sound, which is what people associate with a major scale, and that's probably the most common scale that's used in Western music, and you'll come across that a lot. And that's why we've learnt those notes in particular first, and that's why your instrument is set up so that those notes are very easily available to you. So yeah, I suppose we're going to go back to this, have a look at what we've got, and actually see where the G note is that we finished on. So we started on that low G note, which was on this instrument on the 3rd button. Yours may differ. Then we went up A, B, C, D, E, and then another pull, F sharp, and so that's on the 6th button. And then the G that we got to, that higher one, is on that same 6th button, and pushing it. And so now maybe with a bit of thought you can understand why the pattern with the pushing and pulling changes, because that means that if that top G is a push note and the bottom G is a push note, we can play the two together like we did on the piano keyboard. And that's a good thing to do. It gives a bit more oomph into your sound if you want to emphasize a note. That's one way of doing it, is by playing a G note and another G note an octave above, just to give an extra bit of power to it. Hear that? Yeah, another little tip there. So previously we did a G chord, a G major chord. You could, if you wanted to, add a higher G, the higher G note onto that as well, to give even more sort of noise and power. So there we go. We've now learned 8 notes, the names of 8 notes and the positions where they are on your keyboard. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp and G. And those together make the scale of G major. We just mentioned about what a scale was and how that works on the piano keyboard. And that's actually enough notes to play quite a lot of simple tunes. I think maybe When the Saints Go Marching In or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I think you could do any of those just using the notes we've learnt. And indeed, because there's only 4 buttons we need for that, we can use our 4 fingers and keep them on those buttons, so we don't even have to move our hands around to get that whole 1 octave musical scale. So there we are. That's a good start. That's definitely a good base from which to work on, and yeah, you're up and running. You've got enough notes there to play a fair number of tunes. In the next video we'll extend that a bit more, which will give you a scope to do even more. But for now, thanks for watching again. Cheers. See you later.